Christmas of 2019 was the year me and my two best friends, Mark and Tyler, decided to rent a cabin instead of doing the usual family stuff. We were all in our early 20s, living far from our families, all kind of burnt out from work, and honestly, the idea of lying around for a few days doing absolutely nothing sounded perfect. The cabin we found was about an hour outside of town, tucked halfway in the woods, but still technically in a neighborhood, if 10 other cabins spaced a mile apart counts as one. We got there on Christmas Eve, bringing tons of food, snacks, and beer, and Mark even brought over his Xbox. So we drank and played video games until 2 in the morning. It wasn't exactly a Hallmark holiday, but it was definitely fun. By the time we all went to our rooms to go to bed, I passed out almost immediately. The place was freezing, and the cabin creaked like every other old wooden building, but I was tired enough that none of it mattered, at least until I woke up. It was probably 3 or 4 in the morning, still pitch black outside. I didn't know what time it was exactly, but I knew I'd been asleep for a while, and that something woke me up. Soft, slow footsteps from the main living area. Not walking normally, more like someone taking careful steps, trying not to wake anyone. I blinked a few times, half asleep, and figured it had to be one of the guys, maybe getting water or using the bathroom. I laid there listening, waiting for the footsteps to go down the hall or to the bathroom door. But the sound just stayed in the same area, the creaking boards near the front of the cabin, almost pacing. I wanted to call out and ask if everything was okay, but I didn't feel like yelling from a dark room or going out there and startling them. Eventually, the footsteps stopped. The cabin settled back into silence. I rolled over and fell asleep again. When I finally got up in the morning, sunlight was coming in through the big living room windows, and the guys were already in the living room. First thing I did was jokingly ask who was creeping around at 4 in the morning. I expected some stupid answer from one of them about losing their phone while drunk or something. I don't know. But both of them gave me the exact same confused look. Mark said, "Dude, we all went to bed at 2. And Tyler shook his head, saying he didn't get up once. I laughed it off at first. I figured maybe I'd imagined it, or dreamed the sound and mistaken it as real. But then I glanced over toward the front door. The lock was undone. Not just the deadbolt, the handle lock too, fully unlocked. The door was still shut, but the locks weren't turned. I asked if either of them had gone outside this morning. They both said no, and when I pointed out the door, I saw both of their faces fall flat, as we all kind of realized I might have actually heard someone last night. I mean, we were all fairly sure that we had locked the door. But after a minute of thinking about it, Tyler said maybe the wind shook it loose, or maybe the old door just didn't latch right. You know, the usual excuses people make when they don't want to consider anything else. I think it was because all of us wanted to believe that it was nothing, that we eventually just let it go. We ate breakfast, bundled up in our winter coats because it was still absolutely freezing in the cabin, and spent the afternoon hanging around, playing video games, watching movies, and just having a good time. We also handed out small crappy gifts we'd gotten each other for Christmas, and spent some time FaceTiming our families. It was snowing too much, and way too cold to spend any time outside, even though we all had wanted to go hiking while we were up at the cabin. Over the course of the day, the whole creaking and unlocked door incident faded into just an odd mystery. But as it got later, I guess I started to get a weird gut feeling. We were all in the living room, playing some dumb party game on the Xbox, laughing and yelling at each other. And every so often, I'd catch myself glancing toward the window. I hadn't noticed it much before, but now the blackness outside felt too close. Like someone standing just a few feet back could watch us clearly, while we'd never see them. I knew during the day there were some trees just outside of that window, like literally 10 feet away, and yet it was too dark to even see that. I didn't want to mention the bad feeling I had because I didn't want to kill the mood, especially when I really didn't have a reason to feel the way I did. I never actually saw anything. Because we had stayed up so late last night, we only stayed up until around 12 a.m. when Mark decided to head to bed early. Me and Tyler stayed in the living room for another 30 minutes chatting before both also going to bed. I laid in bed awake for a while. Hard to tell the time just sitting there, but it felt like an hour-ish. There were no curtains or blinds, so the window next to my bed made me feel really uneasy. And then I heard it again. The soft, quiet footsteps at the front of the cabin in the living room. I sat up and listened as intently as I could. I knew this time that it wasn't one of my friends, because I would have heard them leave their rooms and walk down the hallway. So really, I was just listening to see if it was just the house creaking, or if it was actually a person. And after a while of listening, I was absolutely sure that what I was hearing were footsteps. And with whoever it was just pacing around the room, I finally decided to get up and maybe try confronting them. But as I walked over to the bedroom door, suddenly the footsteps moved from the living room to the hallway. They got closer and closer, walking all the way down, passing by my door, and going toward what I think was Mark's room. And then it was quiet. I didn't hear anything for several long seconds. I very quietly grabbed the door handle and pushed my door open just slightly enough to peek out into the hallway, not making a sound. I saw a large man. I mean, like maybe 6'5" or taller, with long hair and a thick beard. He was standing still, facing Mark's bedroom door, and just standing there motionless in the dark. I didn't risk looking for too long and moved away, but left the door cracked open still because I didn't want it to make a click sound if I closed it. And at this point, I didn't know what to do. I froze up, unsure how to get us out of this situation. But just 20 seconds later, I heard a slight creak in the hallway, and before I could even react, my door was suddenly pushed open. The man stood in the doorway, staring at me with wide open eyes and an emotionless face. I yelled at the top of my lungs, and the dude didn't even flinch. Before I knew it, Mark and Tyler came running out of their rooms, and I couldn't see much, but Tyler immediately saw the guy and tried to stop him. But this dude was huge, and basically just slammed Tyler against the wall and threw him to the floor. And Mark was probably just frozen still after seeing that. But then the guy ran off, didn't try fighting all of us. He just took off out of the cabin and, from what we could tell, into the forest. We quickly locked up the place and called the police. It took over 20 minutes, and the whole time we were anticipating the man coming back. All of us were holding whatever temporary weapons we could find, like kitchen knives and the iron fireplace rod. But he didn't come back. Really, we got no answers, and most of the situation fell onto the owner of the cabin, as he was the one who had his cabin broken into. What that man wanted from us or from the cabin, we don't know. From our few theories though, the one that stands out to me is that he might have been there looking for the owner and not knowing it was a rental. It would explain him staring at me and seeing all of us and not really bothering with doing anything afterward. But again, it really is just a theory. He just as likely could have been there to harm us and just saw it was 3 people and decided to run. Whatever the case, we're all just glad it didn't come down to an all-out fight, because I genuinely don't know who would have won in the end.
Think Verizon's best 5G network is expensive? Think again. This season, bring in your AT&T or T-Mobile bill to a Verizon store for a better deal. Then use those unwanted bills to wrap up goodbye gifts to AT&T. Or cut them into snowflakes to celebrate your switch from T-Mobile. 'Tis the season to save at Verizon. Just bring in your bill to your local Verizon store and we'll give you a better deal. Rankings based on root metrics which score report dated 1/2025. Your results may vary. Requires postpaid consumer mobile bill dated within the past 45 days and same name as person redeeming deal. Additional terms apply.
This happened in winter, right around Christmas time. I live with my girlfriend, who I'll name as Sarah, and being that we lived pretty far from our families, we almost always went on road trips around the holidays. This year, we were going to Sarah's family's home for Christmas. The drive was just under 11 hours. Usually this drive wasn't too bad, but maybe we just gotten lucky the years before. We packed and shoved all our bags and suitcases into the trunk, then left for the road trip on Christmas Eve, hoping to make it there at night and have all of Christmas Day with her family. First couple of hours were quiet. Think a lot of people had already done their driving for the holiday, so the roads weren't crowded. Eventually, I pulled off at a small gas station to top off the tank and just take a break for a minute before continuing the drive. There wasn't a single other car there. Sarah waited inside the car with the heat on, while I ran inside to pay for the gas and grab us some drinks. The wind was harsh and cold, and the lot hadn't been plowed yet, so there was basically half a foot of snow I had to run through just to get up to the building. I opened the door and walked in, and right away I noticed how quiet it was. I didn't see anyone. I looked around for a second, but figured they were probably in the back or something, and would come out once I was ready. I grabbed a couple of drinks and walked up to the counter, but nobody came up. I called out hello, and tried just peeking into the back room, but I didn't see anyone, or even hear anyone. I think the place was actually empty, even though the doors were unlocked and the lights were on. It was strange, but after a couple of minutes, I just put the drinks away and went back outside to hopefully at least be able to use the gas pump. As soon as I stepped out, I saw a guy standing at my girlfriend's window. Looked like he was trying to talk to her, knocking on the window and looking in. He was bundled up in heavy winter clothing, so aside from what he was wearing, I couldn't get a good look at him. I started hurrying over, but as soon as he saw me, he backed up and started quickly walking away. I got up to the car and watched as he continued walking down to the road. He clearly wasn't the missing worker at the gas station, so now I was even more concerned. I got in and asked Sarah what that guy was doing. She seemed a little flustered. She said he came up out of nowhere as soon as I walked in, and all the guy was saying was to roll down the window, constantly knocking on it. He didn't say why or really anything else. Obviously, she found it very creepy and had a bad feeling about it, so she kept the doors and windows locked and didn't respond to him. I didn't even bother staying. I turned on the car and drove out of there, hoping we'd reach another gas station along the way. That place just had an unnerving feeling to it, and neither of us wanted to be there a second longer. Unfortunately, because of that whole thing, we ended up having to take a detour to a different gas station, because along our main route, the next one was too far, and would have risked us running out of fuel in the middle of nowhere and in the freezing cold. And it became pretty clear that things were not going to work out the way we wanted. With the detour and the snow slowing us down, we were way behind. It was well into the night already, and we were still 4 hours away. Both of us were tired and figured we could stop at a cheap motel to sleep at for a few hours, and just arrive at the house early on Christmas morning instead. Sarah called her family to let them know, and I found a motel just on the side of the highway, a few miles down. The 24/7 motel sign was still on, but the parking lot was empty. I mean, Christmas Eve night is an odd one to spend at a motel. I pulled in and walked up to the door, feeling relieved to see a clerk inside. I got a small room for the night and headed back out to get our travel bags and get us into the room. We were exhausted and pretty much passed out within 30 minutes of getting inside. I set an alarm for 2 a.m. so that we could get up and make it to our family's house by 6 a.m. I think both of us slept like rocks. I never woke up once during the 5-ish hours we were sleeping. When my alarm went off, I groggily got up, not even wanting to get out of bed. I let Sarah sleep in for a bit while I packed what little we had, then went outside and tossed all the stuff in the back seat. It still looked like nobody else had come by the motel at night. It was incredibly cold, and the wind was awful. It wasn't even snowing that hard, but the wind was blowing all the snow dust up from the ground, making it hard to see. I ran back in and told Sarah it was time to go, then headed back to the front of the building to check us out of the room. I walked into the small office room where the clerk was, but they weren't there. I stood still for a moment, feeling the deja vu of what had happened at the gas station, but this time, obviously, I had seen them earlier. I took a few more steps closer to the desk, and again called out, but still nobody was there. However, I saw a bunch of papers all over the floor behind the desk. It looked like the worker had left in a hurry. I felt this really bad feeling start coming over me as I backed away and ran back out to get Sarah. I sprinted down the row of room doors, opening ours and telling Sarah we had to leave right now. She hurried out and into the car while I grabbed what was left, and then also got in. I noticed my hands were shaking as I turned it on, and was just barely able to get the car going through the snow-covered parking lot. It was as I was pulling back onto the highway that I passed the side of the building and just caught sight of a man on the side of it. Even from that quick glimpse, I saw it was the same guy from the gas station, same winter coat and everything. Knowing something was definitely wrong, I got onto the highway and Sarah called 911. We met officers at a gas station 15 minutes away, and this is where it got a lot more disturbing and creepy. One of the officers brought up how impossible it was that the random guy could have been following us without us noticing. And sure enough, he found a tracker stuck right under the back wheel well on our car. The guy must have stuck it there when he went up to our car at the gas station. It took over an hour for separate officers to go to the gas station and the motel, and me and Sarah went pale when they reported back that both workers were confirmed missing. So obviously this guy that was following us had something to do with it. My guess is that he had done something to the worker at the gas station before we arrived, and then when I got there, maybe he thought I saw something that I shouldn't have. So he followed us to probably get rid of us too. Can't say for sure, because they never found the guy. Only evidence was a blurry image from a gas station CCTV camera. It definitely was the most unsettling way to spend our Christmas morning. And really, we were thinking about it for the entire holiday week, but ultimately, that seemed to be the end of it. After that week, we got no updates on anything. Unfortunately, I haven't heard anything back about either the gas station worker or the motel worker, so I think it's safe to assume they're both still missing, which makes it even more eerie to think that both me and Sarah could have been still missing as well, had we not gotten out of there.
Are you the kind of person who knows things? Things like you can get a domain from Squarespace, not just a website? Well, now you are that person, because now you definitely know you can get a domain from Squarespace. Something like whisperingbloom.com.
This was 2016. Because of my work and where my family lived, and a bunch of scheduling things, this was one of the few times I spent Christmas alone. I had a nice, small house in a good neighborhood, and although being alone on the holiday wasn't great, I still enjoyed the day, either just staying in watching Christmas movies or going for walks around the neighborhood if the weather was decent. That year, Christmas Day started calm. I woke up to quiet snow falling outside, not a full storm yet. I made coffee, put Home Alone on in the background, and ate breakfast on the couch. It was honestly kind of nice. Around noon, the snow started picking up a little, but nowhere near blizzard levels. I decided to go for a quick walk anyway, before it was too late. The neighborhood had the whole holiday feeling to it, with lights on the houses, wreaths on the door, and no cars on the road. Just a calm, empty, quiet neighborhood. I only saw one other person on the whole walk, a guy shoveling his driveway 2 streets over. Other than that, it was quiet. When I got home, though, the wind was starting to build, blowing snow in little spirals across the street. I figured the forecast had been right about the storm coming in the evening, but I didn't mind. I had food, blankets, and movies, so I was all set to stay in. The storm hit faster than expected. Around 5, it went from snowy to whiteout in under 30 minutes. The wind started shaking the windows. Not enough for me to worry, but enough to remind me that I probably shouldn't go outside again. And with all that noise outside, the house almost felt extra quiet. I made dinner and kept watching movies. By 8, though, the storm had gotten bad enough it was drowning out the TV. I could hear things thumping around outside, branches or maybe loose Christmas decorations. At the time, I didn't think too much of it. It was about an hour later, so around 9, when I heard the first knock. Not loud or frantic, just a single knock on the front door, sharp enough to cut through the wind and definitely be a knock, not a thump like I'd been hearing. I froze on the couch. No one ever came to my door on Christmas, and no one should have been out in that weather anyway. I muted the TV and waited, listening. For a long moment, there was nothing but the storm. Then another knock, 3 this time. I got up and walked toward the door, but not close enough for anyone outside to be able to see me through the side window. I didn't say anything, didn't move the blinds either. I just listened. My door didn't have one of those holes you could look through. It just had the side windows, which, of course, if I looked through, then whoever was out there would also see me. I stood there until my nerves started catching up with me. I really couldn't hear much of anything over the storm, but whoever it was didn't knock again, and I figured I should probably just leave it. There was no way I was going to answer the door anyway. Eventually, I went back to the couch, still tense but trying to brush it off. I turned the movie back on, but it only took about 5 minutes for me to hear something else. I quickly paused the TV and listened. It was very faint, but sounded like something being dragged through the snow, slowly moving from the front door all the way around the house. I followed the sound with my eyes until it went up to the back door and stopped. There was no curtain or anything covering that door, so I was hesitant to even peer around the corner and look. But then there were those 3 knocks again. I almost couldn't believe it. I stood up and tried to slowly lean around the corner and look at the back door. Instantly, I saw a pair of eyes piercing in at me. It was so dark, though, I could only barely see the man before I moved back out of sight. What the hell was he doing here? I felt this was enough to call 911, even if nothing else happened, because of how creepy this was. I got my phone and got on the line with an operator. I still stayed in the living room though, honestly just too scared to move and be seen by the man again. Something about the look in his eyes was horrifying. I think I was standing there on the phone for 2 to 3 minutes, when suddenly there was a slight scraping sound. And before I could even think of what it was, there was a sudden loud crash against the back door. I heard the glass shatter, and parts of the door slamming and falling onto the floor. The wind instantly flooded the house and covered up any other sounds I could have heard. I assumed the man got inside the house, but I couldn't hear any footsteps or anything, and there was no way I was going to look over there. I quickly hid behind the couch. Not the best hiding spot, but I didn't know what else to do. The fact that I couldn't see anything and couldn't hear anything other than the heavy winds made the next 5 minutes excruciatingly anxious and tense. I knew the man had to be walking around looking for me, or maybe stealing stuff from my house, but I didn't dare try looking. And then, finally, I heard knocks at the front door and a police officer's voice call out through the wind. I got up and sprinted to the door, letting the officer in. But the man was already gone. There were wet shoe prints going throughout parts of the house. I don't know if he was looking for me or what, but it seemed like after breaking in and barely searching, he just left. His shoe prints in the snow went toward the field in the backyard, and were covered up by the blizzard within minutes. Even after the police left, I didn't sleep. I just sat on the edge of my bed with every light in the house on, listening to the wind rattle what was left of the back door. At some point, the storm let up, but the silence that followed felt even worse. Every creak in the house made me flinch. The officers returned when the sun came up to take another look. They told me they'd patrol the area for a while, but with the storm burying everything, there wasn't much else they could do. Before they left, one of them said something I still think about sometimes. He told me that with storms like that, it wasn't uncommon for people to wander, looking for unlocked houses, knowing the blizzard would cover their traces. But I mentioned the knocking and how he circled my home. The officer just shook his head. He said that some people test the doors first to see who answers, or if anyone does. So by not answering the first time, and then showing myself to him at the back door, if he was trying to find out whether I was alone, I basically gave him the answer. I never really realized how every small choice I made that night sort of led to what ended up happening. I just got insanely lucky that the man wasn't more determined to find me, because I can only imagine how things would have ended if he did.
I matched with this woman on Bumble last spring, and to this day, I still don't know who I actually met that night. Her name on the app was Rachel. She looked normal in her pictures, nothing crazy or overly edited. Just a cute brunette who worked in marketing and liked hiking. We talked for a few days, and she seemed down to earth. No weird messages or vibes. She didn't push for anything, and she actually wanted to go slow. Honestly, it felt refreshing compared to the other matches. After about a week of talking, we agreed to meet up for dinner on a Wednesday night. She picked a restaurant in a quiet part of town, a little nicer than the places I usually go, but nothing too crazy. When I got there, I texted her that I parked. She didn't answer. I waited at the entrance, checking my phone every couple minutes. 10 minutes went by, then 20. I thought maybe she got stuck in traffic. I messaged again, saying I was inside by the hostess stand. I started getting a little embarrassed. It looked like I was getting stood up. The hostess asked if I wanted a table, and I told her I was waiting for someone.
The McDonald's snack wrap is back. You brought it back. Ranch snack wrap. Spicy snack wrap. You broke the internet for a snack. Snack wrap is back. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
She told me no one under the name Rachel had checked in. Now 30 minutes passed, and I was about to leave, and a guy came in and walked straight up to me. He was maybe mid-40s, scruffy, kind of heavy, wearing a black hoodie. He asked me if I was Jake. My name wasn't on the reservation, so it caught me off guard. I told him yes, and he said he was Rachel's brother. He told me Rachel wasn't feeling well, but she still wanted to meet me, and she asked him to pick me up and bring me to their place since it was really close and she didn't want to cancel. The whole thing already sounded weird, and I asked why she didn't text me that. He said she tried, but her phone died, and she didn't really want to bail on our date. His tone was calm and polite, and he didn't seem aggressive or anything, but this was just a little off. I asked where she lived, and he said just a few blocks over, and that driving would be easier because the sidewalks were icy. I stood there debating it. A part of me felt like a jerk if I refused, like maybe she really was sick and embarrassed. But the other part of me felt like nothing about this was normal. I told him I was fine walking. I asked for the address. He said it would be better if he showed me. That's when something in my stomach told me not to go. I told him I'd rather reschedule, and I started walking toward the door. He stepped in front of me, not aggressively, but just enough to block my path. He said Rachel would be upset and that she specifically asked him to bring me. I told him I'd text her later. He stared at me for a few seconds, then stepped aside and said, "Have a good night," in a tone that sounded more like a warning than anything else. I left the restaurant fast and got into my car. I locked the doors immediately. As I pulled out of the parking space, I saw him standing outside the restaurant watching me. I drove away thinking that was the end of it, and maybe it was just some weird misunderstanding. Later that night, around 11 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was a message on Bumble from Rachel's profile. It said, "Why didn't you come?" I replied that her brother came to the restaurant and told me she was sick. She answered instantly, saying she didn't have a brother. All I could think was, what? I told her exactly what happened, and she stopped responding. I figured maybe she was freaked out too. I tried to sleep after that, but around 1 a.m., I got a notification that someone was trying to log into my email, then my bank app, and then my Instagram, all within minutes of each other. I changed my passwords and turned on every security feature I could. I didn't quite connect it to Rachel's situation at first. The next morning, I checked Bumble to see if she had replied, but her profile was gone, completely deleted. Around noon, I got a text from an unknown number. It said, "You should have come with me." I showed the text to my roommate, and he told me to block the number and report it. I blocked it, but the messages didn't stop. New numbers kept texting me, different area codes. Each message was something short and vague, like, "We saw you, next time don't waste my time," and "You made it harder for yourself." At one point, a message came through that used my full name, not the name I used on Bumble, my real legal name. I didn't answer any of them. That night, while I was home alone, someone knocked on my apartment door. I was on the couch, and I could not move. After a minute of silence, there was another knock, harder this time. I thought about calling the police, but it had only been 2 knocks, and I didn't want to sound paranoid. I looked through the peephole. No one was there. The hallway was empty. I stepped back and waited. After a few seconds, I heard heavy footsteps walking down the stairs. The next day, I called the restaurant and asked if anyone matching that guy's description had a reservation or had checked in around the time I was there. They said no. I asked if anyone had been standing around outside looking in, maybe waiting for someone. The hostess told me one of their servers actually mentioned a man in a hoodie pacing back and forth outside for almost an hour before I arrived. She said they thought he was waiting for someone, but he never went inside until he walked directly up to me. I didn't tell her the rest. I felt sick thinking how long he had been watching the entrance. I reached out to the local police and gave them the number that had texted me first. They weren't able to trace it to anyone, and since no crime had technically been committed, according to them, they couldn't do much. I deleted Bumble, I changed my phone number, and I changed all my passwords. Things were quiet for about a week. Then, one night when I was taking the trash out behind my apartment building, I found a folded piece of paper shoved under the handle of the dumpster. It had my name on it. I opened it. Inside was a printed photo of me from the night of the supposed date. Me standing inside the restaurant lobby looking at my phone. The angle was from outside the window. Someone had watched me the entire time. On the back of the photo, it said, "You." I couldn't sleep for days. I started staying at friends' houses. Every little sound made my heart jump. A few days later, I checked the dumpster again and found nothing. I became really hyper-aware of my surroundings. Eventually, the messages and everything stopped. Or maybe they just stopped showing themselves to me. Maybe they were still watching. The only thing I know is that the person I met that night was not Rachel's brother, because Rachel didn't exist. Someone made the entire profile from scratch. Someone created her just to lure somebody somewhere. Someone was expecting me to leave that restaurant with them. And the worst part is that I still don't know who he was. I have not been on a dating app since. I feel like I was supposed to disappear that night, and the only reason I didn't was because I trusted my gut at the last second. After turning 30 years old back in January, I started getting sick of being single. I hadn't been in a real relationship in several years, and I wanted to get back out there. I had always resisted online dating, but I eventually decided to bite the bullet and download the dating app Hinge. After a few days of using the app, I did end up with several matches, but none of them ever amounted to anything. One Monday night, I was chilling at home watching hockey when I got a phone notification from Hinge, saying that I had matched with a girl named Rebecca. Her profile looked legit. She had a photo of herself at her job, a short video of her and her friends at a bar shooting darts, a picture of her at an outdoor concert, and a regular selfie of just her face. I thought she was very attractive, so I messaged her. Before long, we were having a nice conversation about our respective jobs and hobbies. She seemed cool and normal, so I asked her if she wanted to meet at a local arcade bar that Friday. She took a while to respond, something like 4 hours. At about 1 a.m., she finally got back to me and agreed to the date. After our plans were set, I didn't hear from her at all for 4 days, until literally 30 minutes before our date. She sent a text that just said, "On my way," at our agreed upon time. I pulled up to the bar and was immediately surprised by how slow the place looked. This was a Friday at 8 p.m., and this bar only had 2 cars in their parking lot. I pulled into a spot right by the front sign of the bar. Mere seconds after I put my car in park, I got a text from Rebecca saying that she was having car trouble and that she was parking on the other side of the bar. This immediately struck me as super suspicious, since the other side of the bar was nothing but a few dumpsters and a fence that separated the bar from the woods. It didn't make any sense how she would even end up back there. I tried calling her, but after one ring it went to voicemail. I hung up and immediately received another text from her that said, "Please just come around back and help with my car." Alarms were going off in my head, but I wasn't immediately sure what to do. I sent her a text that just said, "This doesn't feel right, I'm leaving." I know that sounds a little dumb in retrospect, but I was seriously unsure of how to handle the situation. After sending her the text, I put my car in reverse and started leaving the parking lot. As soon as I was about to turn off the lot, 2 men in ski masks came running out from behind the bar straight towards my car. They didn't appear to be holding any kind of weapon, but I was definitely not going to wait around any longer to find out. I sped off all the way back to my apartment. Once I got back home, I noticed that there was a big dent on the top of my car's trunk, as if one of the guys had thrown a large rock at my car as I was speeding off. I didn't even notice a heavy object hitting my car, that's how scared I was in the moment. I called the police and told them the whole story, but at the end of the day, there wasn't much they could really do. They said they would keep me posted if any leads came up, whatever that means, but I haven't heard back from them. Weirdly, this didn't totally scare me off dating apps, since I figured the odds of that happening again are very slim. Still, I'm much more careful about meeting people off of them, and I make sure to call or FaceTime women before meeting them.
Nationwide is so much more than a great insurance company. They're one of America's largest financial services companies. Like how I'm more than just Peyton Manning. I'm also motivating Manning.
I still remember that stretch of 2024 like it was yesterday. Humid city nights, cramped condo living, and the constant hum of anxiety sitting in my chest because the board exam was only a few months away. I was staying in a small condominium in the city with my 3 friends. All of us were buried in review materials, practice exams, and the occasional emotional breakdown disguised as a coffee break. And like every other stressed out 20-something stuck between obligation and burnout, I thought it would be a great idea to distract myself with someone new. That's when I met him. Let's call him Michael. I don't know if it was the boredom, the loneliness, or just the fact that I was tired of thinking about formulas, but I found him attractive right away. He was charming in the beginning. Calm, funny, the type of guy who replied fast, but not too fast. It was as if he mastered the perfect balance of interest and chill. We started talking every day, and then every night. And before I could fully process what I was doing, we were dating. Or at least something that felt like dating. Michael was, at first, everything a sane person would want. Respectful, attentive, a good conversationalist. We would be on calls for hours while I lay on my thin condo mattress, staring at the ceiling and listening to his voice fill the room. The only weird thing was that he never showed his face during our calls. He claimed his phone had been stolen and the laptop he was using didn't have a functioning camera. I didn't question it at first. But slowly, little red flags began popping up like notifications I kept swiping away. The biggest one? The way his tone changed whenever the topic got even remotely intimate. Out of nowhere, this man would ask me for explicit selfies every single time. I shut it down firmly every time. I wasn't comfortable with that, especially online. I told him that straight, that it was like talking to a dog in heat. No, scratch that. A dog in heat at least has the excuse of being an animal. This guy, he was worse, because he knew exactly what he was doing. We'd argue about it, a lot. He'd push, I'd refuse, and he'd sulk. Sometimes he'd apologize, sometimes he'd respect my boundaries, only to ask again the next day like we didn't just fight about the same thing. The cycle became exhausting, and yet, despite all of that, I still wanted to meet him in person. To see if this connection was real, or if I was just romanticizing a voice on the other end of a screen. But every time, and I mean every time I suggested meeting up, he had an excuse. He had errands, he was busy, he didn't feel well, his schedule was full, he wasn't in the city, he had a family thing, he had an emergency, or the classic, soon. It was always soon, but soon never came. And somewhere between the late night calls, the excuses, the constant sexual pressure, and the growing pit in my stomach, something in me began to shift. Something wasn't right with Michael, and I felt it, long before I admitted it. My friends had been warning me for weeks. Every time Michael dodged a meetup, every time he gave some vague excuse about his broken camera, every time he pushed for explicit photos but refused to show so much as half his face, my friends would exchange looks. Does he not show himself on video call at all? One of them asked one night while we were reviewing in the living room. Not even a quick flash of his face? Another added. I shrugged. His phone got stolen, I reminded them for maybe the 10th time that month, and his laptop camera is broken. They stared at me like I had just announced I believed in unicorns. Marie, come on, one of them said gently. If he really wanted to see you, he would find a way. Even a 10-year-old laptop has a camera. Something's off. I knew they were right. Deep down, I felt it too. But I kept defending him. I kept telling myself he wouldn't call me every day if he wasn't serious. I kept insisting he was just going through something personal. I kept believing the version of the person he pretended to be. Then came December, weeks before Christmas, with that stupid mix of hope and denial swirling in my chest. I finally told him, come over, meet my family, spend Christmas with us. He sounded thrilled. He said yes instantly. No hesitation or excuses. For the first time, I let myself believe that maybe everything would pay off in the end. I pictured a sweet Christmas morning introduction, a cheesy meet my boyfriend moment, a fresh start, maybe even something real. But the day before our meetup, everything shattered. I remember sitting on the condo couch reviewing flashcards when he called me. His breathing was shaky and uneven. At first, I thought he was just stressed. Then I realized he was crying. "Can we talk?" he whispered. Something in me went cold. It took a while for him to choke it out, but when he finally did, the words hit me like a punch straight to the stomach. "I'm a catfish." My heart dropped. He confessed everything. The photos, fake, taken from an Indonesian influencer he'd been pretending to be. His name, fake. His work, fake. His nationality, he lied about everything. My head was spinning so hard, I thought I would throw up. I felt my skin crawl and my face drain of color. It was like he peeled off a mask I didn't even know he was wearing. And then, because apparently the universe wanted the moment to be even worse, he sent me a picture of his real face. He claimed he didn't lie about being 24, but honestly, I've seen uncles in their late 30s who looked younger than him. In that moment, my brain connected all the dots. The way he pushed for explicit photos, the way he'd get sulky and aggressive when I refused, the way he'd avoid meeting up. Knowing what he really looked like, what he really was, made all his past behavior 10 times more uncomfortable. When I told him I wanted to break up, he snapped. He said, "So you're just like the other girls. You only liked me because of the pictures of the guy I used. You never cared about me. You're no different." I was stunned. He lied to me, deceived me, manipulated me, yet somehow I became the villain. He ranted and I cried. He blamed me, then he apologized, and then he begged. He guilt-tripped, like a full cycle of emotional manipulation condensed into 30 minutes. And then came the most unhinged part of it all. He said, "Please just let me stay with your family on Christmas. I already told my parents I won't be home. I have nowhere else to go." I stared at my phone in disbelief. Absolutely not. I muted him. I ignored every message, blocked the numbers, refused to let his chaos bleed into my holiday. And I had a peaceful Christmas with my family, the kind of Christmas I needed. But if things had truly ended there, I wouldn't be writing this. Because Michael didn't stay gone. He didn't accept the breakup. He didn't disappear quietly. And the worst part was still coming. For almost a year, life felt normal again. I focused on myself, my hobbies, and my friends. I became active on Instagram again, something I had stopped doing while dealing with the emotional fallout of Michael's lies. I started posting selfies, little life updates, even some cosplay photos I was proud of. It felt good to exist online without feeling watched. But the one thing I forgot? Michael and I still followed each other. It didn't even cross my mind until it was too late. One night, after posting a few stories, nothing dramatic, just a selfie and a behind the scenes of a new cosplay, I got a notification. One message request, Michael. He replied to my story, "Hey, how have you been?" Just reading his name made something cold crawl up my spine. I didn't open the message. I didn't even breathe for a second. I just locked my phone and tossed it aside, like the words would burn me if I looked at them for too long. I tried to ignore it, but the notifications kept coming. Every few hours, another message. Eventually, I got so sick of it. I opened our chat, and the moment I did, my entire body went cold. Because sitting there, sent just minutes earlier, was a photo of the front of our house. My parents weren't home. I felt like the air was being sucked out of my lungs. My fingers moved on instinct. I locked all the doors in the house, ran upstairs, shut my bedroom door, and locked that too. Then I called the police. While I was on the phone, trying to speak without my voice cracking, I heard knocking. Pounding. He was outside and yelling my name. He yelled, "Please just open the door. We can talk." His voice was desperate and unhinged, a tone I had never heard before. I held my phone so tightly I thought it might crack. I crouched beside my bed, trying not to make a sound while the dispatcher kept me calm, step by step. "We're on the way. Don't come out. Stay on the line." It felt like hours, even though it was probably just minutes. Thankfully, we lived close to a police station. I heard footsteps outside, an officer shouting, and then finally, silence. They arrested him. When they came to the door to check on me, I finally unlocked it, still shaking. The officer who talked to me had a serious look on his face. The officer told me he was holding a knife. I had to grip the door frame to stay upright. He came to my house with a knife. I didn't know if he meant to threaten me, or hurt himself, but none of the possibilities made me feel any better. They were all terrifying. Because of that, I had no choice but to tell my parents everything, every lie he told, and every red flag I ignored. They scolded me, of course, for trusting someone online and for hiding it from them, but underneath the worry and anger, they were relieved that I was alive. My mom hugged me like I came home from war. Thinking back on the words, "he was holding a knife," still give me the chills. I've never been a big dating app guy. Maybe a little bit in college, but mostly Tinder when I was messing around. After that, I had a 4-year relationship. I didn't really know how to go out and flirt anymore. I didn't really have game anymore. So I was on Tinder for a bit, just testing the waters as a freshly single guy for a bit, and going out with my single friends a lot. But when it came time to start seriously dating again, the easy answer was, of course, a serious dating app. Hinge was the one everyone recommended for finding quality women looking to actually date. So I got on there, and I got a few matches in the first few days. One was a really pretty girl named Jenna. She was this short Italian-looking girl with black hair, tan skin, and she looked like she worked out. We seemed to hit it off immediately in the chat. After like 10 messages from both sides, she asked for my Instagram, saying she hates opening the Hinge app and would rather talk there. So I gave it to her, and moments later, I got a follow request from her account. Her username was JennaX1 with 3 A's or something like that. She had like 2,000 followers, she followed 200 people, and she had 2 posts. Both posts were her taking a selfie in the mirror, but she admittedly looked good. The posts got a lot of likes and comments, all thirsty-looking guys by the looks of it though. She had a story up, and I clicked on it, and it was her at the gym taking a mirror selfie. Also looked good. She DM'd me right away, and we took the conversation from there. We continued talking about the same stuff we left off at, the gym, traveling, and we found that we related pretty well, and surprisingly, we agreed to meet for a spontaneous drink at a bar in town that night. She said she was in the same town as me, which was convenient, so we planned for 9 p.m. I knew the bar we were going to quite well, and I kinda knew the bartenders, so I decided to go a little early. The bar was slightly busy, but there were open bar stools at the bar, so I sat at one, seated away from people. It was like 8:50. The usual bartender came over and greeted me, and she gave me an espresso martini. I casually took some sips and DM'd Jenna that I was there, but that she can take her time. Then I went through her profile a little more. I went to her tagged pictures. There were none. I went through the comments again, and there truly was not a single comment from a female. It was all dudes. I hoped that wasn't a red flag that she got around. Then, around this time, a man sat down on the bar stool next to me and greeted me saying, "How you doing?" And I nodded with a smile. I went back to looking at my phone, but the man next to me continued to engage in conversation. He asked if I come to this bar often because he recognized me. This is when I took a closer look at him. He was maybe like 38, just slightly gray, kind of overweight, and a patchy beard that he definitely should have shaved. I didn't recognize him at all though. I told him, yeah, I come here once in a while. He then reached out his hand for a handshake and introduced himself as Rob. Oh, brother, I thought to myself. I wasn't in the mood for this. But I shook his hand and introduced myself as well. Around now, the bartender came over and said, "Finally decided to get a drink, I see," to this guy. He gave a weird, subtle laugh, but that kind of made me think for a bit. Was he already here? And he just came up to the bar to talk to me? I DM'd Jenna again, saying, "Help me, this weird guy I think is hitting on me," as a joke. But I realized my previous DM to her was left unseen. I asked her if she was on her way. Then I went back to looking at her profile, and I decided to check her following list. And I realized she didn't follow a single female, only dudes. What kind of girl doesn't follow any of her girlfriends? This was weird. Was I catfished? The annoying guy to my right kept trying to talk to me. I had to tell him 1 second, please, as I tried calling Jenna through Instagram. She didn't pick up. It was past 9 o'clock, and it seemed like she was ghosting me, and I also just felt like this profile was fake now. I went to Hinge to find that her profile was gone, like I expected. Yup, I got catfished. I asked the bartender for the check, and then the Rob guy said, "Leaving already? Where are you from?" I said, "Yeah, I gotta get going." I didn't care to explain the situation to this guy. To be honest, I was kind of annoyed at how outwardly he went out of his way to talk to me. As I got the check, this guy would still keep trying to talk to me, even telling me I should stick around and that the hot chicks come around this time. I thought he was weird, and I was kind of just being short with him at this point. I may sound like a douche, but if you met the guy and experienced the way he approached, you'd have been annoyed too. As I said bye to the bartender and turned to leave, I felt a tight grip on my left wrist suddenly. I turned to see the man had his hand wrapped around my wrist. I said, "What the fuck are you doing?" loud enough for other people to notice and turn their heads. He started whispering to me and making a weird face. He said, "I'm Jenna. I'm sorry. Please don't go." I felt disgusting, like I needed to take a shower. I felt like throwing up. I felt violated. I broke free of his grip and hurried out of the bar to my car. It was a quiet drive home. I didn't play music. I didn't call anyone because I was still taking it in, and it felt embarrassing. When I got home, I collapsed into bed and stared at the ceiling for a bit, just absorbing what happened. I went to Instagram to go block the Jenna account, but it appeared he already blocked me, or he disabled the Instagram account entirely. This quickly became an experience I just wanted to put behind me. I turned on the TV and just tried to move on. I'd tell people tomorrow. And after I turned off the light is the part that made me hate having a bedroom on the first floor. There was an aggressively loud bang on my window. The blinds were closed and I couldn't see to the other side. Instead of yelling "Who's there?" I decided to stay quiet. I watched the blinds in horror, and then there was a voice on the other side, a man's voice saying my name, Scott, over and over again. I refused to acknowledge it, but he knew I was in there. He could see the light of the TV. He might have followed me without me realizing. He just kept saying Scott. He had to have said it like 10 times before it stopped. I stayed in my bedroom the rest of the night, and the next morning, I lifted the blind to see this. A note on the other side of the glass, saying, "I'll be watching you." I didn't leave my apartment the rest of the weekend. I moved a few days later.